All right, let's go out to Florida, and we'll talk with David. Hey, David.
How are you, Pastor Andrew?
Hey, good. What do you got
Okay,
for us tonight?
good, good. Well, my question is from Revelation 2 about the church to Ephesus, and a couple of questions in that. One is that, well, first of all, I went to a church for 8 years where the pastor was continually saying how he had left his first love, and he was trying to say that most of the people in the church had, and in fact, even within Christianity. And then I heard another pastor on Facebook Live. I go to that church, but I didn't go yesterday. In fact, I drove 72 miles to hear the refreshing word of grace from a great preacher. But anyway, he used that in his sermon, and he said, "We've left our first love." And then he talks about like you have to be excited. It's like putting a socket, putting an electric plug in a socket, and you got to be energized. You got to be walking in the Spirit 100% of the time. To me, it sounds like they're wearing themselves out. But what is this about leaving your first love? That was my first question. If you could comment on that, on the context of that, and also when I mentioned the Nicolaitan,
Yeah.
A holiness preacher had told me once, and he used it for evidence that you could lose your salvation. He said that Nicolaitans came from Nicholas, who was in the book of Acts, who was, I think, one of the elders. I had never heard that before.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, there was believed to be basically a heretical group that was taught by Nicholas, and it's the evidence there is limited, but that is correct. That there was possibly a following of this man Nicholas, and he was denying the faith, and he had some sort of group that followed him, and the doctrines there were related to sexual immorality that he was promoting, and idolatry was involved. And we don't know very much, but it's guesswork about that movement. Now, the reason that comes up is because he says here in verse 6, "This you do have, you hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate." So obviously the deeds of the Nicolaitans are sinful, immoral. We can know that for sure. But as to the specifics, well, there may not be enough historical detail to give you more than that. Now, as far as your first love, I think the idea there is dependency. I mean, look at you. You're stomping out evil. What is it that you've put people to the test, verse 2. You've found them to be false. You have perseverance, verse 3. You've endured for my name's sake. You haven't grown weary. So these people are strong-minded and strong-willed and stomping out evil and standing for justice and truth. The problem is, it sounds like that's all they are. There's not much dependency on Christ in terms of bearing the fruit of the Spirit. The love and the peace and the joy and the kindness is just not there because Jesus is the source of all that. And so, it's like I was saying earlier. I mean, we could spend our lives debating people and trying to win with facts and figures. And many times that will do zero in someone else's life. Or we can also love people and express the grace of God to them and forgive them when they hurt us and respond softly, trusting God's Spirit to express Himself through us. And that would be dependency. And it seems like they had lost sight of this. That's the point. So they were all about truth and justice, and love was not coming through. The relationship and the connectedness with their first love, Jesus Christ living in them, was not coming through. And so that's what this admonition is about, David. But what you heard, it sounds like plastic smiles and fabricated feelings. I mean, what you're being told is, now, David, don't you leave your first love. You need to act joyful. You better act joyful, David. And then what are you going to do? Like go to church and act joyful? Put on a plastic grin? They say, "How you doing, brother?" And you say, "I'm blessed." and you just sort of fake it till you make it. I mean, is that what he's talking about here? It sounds like to me you're just getting a little bit of bad advice and maybe a bad spin on this passage. This is not about emotions. It's not about you've got to feel something, you've got to be on fire. These people are already, by our definition, on fire. I mean, look at them. They're persevering, they're enduring, they don't grow weary, they're calling out false teaching, they're putting things to the test. I mean, there are so many people that would say, wow, aren't they strong Christians? If we saw them today, we might say that. So this idea that the passage is saying they need to be on fire, well, they're already on fire. The problem is, they're just not trusting Christ with the bearing of the fruit of the Spirit and that softness that he produces in terms of kindness and peace and gentleness and love and joy. It's not there at all. And so that's why the admonition comes. So, this is not something you need to wake up and freak out about every day, David. Somebody's trying to scare you about this, but this was written to a whole congregation 2,000 years ago who was specifically losing sight of the indwelling Christ and dependency on him. I mean, what's the answer for all of us? Well, it's simple. Fix your eyes on Jesus, trust him, understand that he could have given you a ticket to heaven and a book and said, David, read this book and use this ticket and I'll see you at the gate whenever you die. But he didn't do that. He gave you himself for a reason. He gave his life to you, in you, living inside of you, so that he could express his life through you. And that's always one choice away, as we just trust him and say, Lord Jesus Christ, you're my life today. You're my everything. You're my attitudes and actions, and I trust you to be that. So, David, I hope that encourages you, my friend, and reach out again anytime. Great to hear from you.